In this video, we are going to write a C program to find the prime number between 1 to 100 or any number you want. So welcome guys, we are here in the code blocks to write that C program that will find the prime number between 1 to any number that have entered by the user. But before that, I would recommend subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell icon to get notified for future updates. In the last video, we have written a C program that is going to find if the user have entered a prime number or not. So if you haven't seen that video, I would recommend seeing that video. That is going to help you knowing the basics to find a prime number. In that program, we were taking the input from a user and checking the number of factors that number has. As to be a prime number, a number needs to have two factors. Thus, if the number was having two factors, then the number was a prime number. If the number was not having two factors, then the number was not a prime number. But things are a bit different here. So let's see how this program is going to work. In the previous program, we were entering a number and checking whether that number is a prime or not. But in this program, we will ask our users to enter a limit to which they want to get those prime numbers. We are going to enter a limit like 10. Then our program should return something like 2, 3, 5, 7. Thus, to take the input from our user, we will write something like print enter a limit, and we will store that limit into a variable by a scanf function, and again we will declare that limit variable. Let's take another example. Suppose we have entered a negative value. Then our program should check whether that number is a positive or negative number. If that number is a negative number, our program should indicate that you have entered a negative number and you need to enter a positive number. So we will use a if-else statement to do so. So till now the program is pretty similar to the last program, but now after the if statement, we have to enter to the else statement. That is, if the number is a positive number, what we need to do now? As we are taking the limit instead of a number, we need to check each number in that limit, whether that number is a prime or not. Suppose we have entered something like 10. Thus, now we need to check each number starting from 1 to 10, whether there is a prime number or not. So we will check the number 1, then we will check the number 2, then 3, and so on till the number 10 to find whether there is a prime number or not. So this is again introducing a loop that is going to give us each number from 1 to n as an input to check whether that number is a prime or not. So we will write something like for int I is equals to 1, we will declare the I is equals to 1 and the I value is going to be less than or equals to the limit. We will update our I as I++. So this loop is going to work as input. So now we have the input, thus we need to check whether that number is a prime or not. In the first iteration, I is going to have a value 1. That is, we need to check whether 1 is a prime number or not. In the second iteration, I is going to have the value 2 and we need to check whether 2 is a prime number or not, and so on. And in the third iteration, I is going to have the value 3 and we need to check whether 3 is a prime number or not. And this process is going to continue until the I value is not equals to the limit. And this is going to provide us each input from 1 to the limit. Suppose in the fifth iteration, I is having the value 5. So we need to check whether that 5 is a prime number or not. So as we have done before, we need to divide 5 by 1, and 5 by 2, and 5 by 3, and 5 by 4 until 5 divided by 5. So we need to divide 5 from 1 to the number 5 as we have done that before. So we need to write another loop to check whether that number is a prime number or not, or whether that input I is a prime number or not. We will write a similar loop that has been written in the last program, like for int j is equals to 1, as we have taken I as a part of a for loop. So we will use j in the next for loop. So int j is equals to 1 with a semicolon, and j is going to continue until j is equals to I, where I is the input, right? So don't be confused. Similar to the last lesson, this for loop is going to contain a if statement. And lastly, if the factor box is having value 2, then print the number. So we are here in the code blocks to write our C program. In the main function, we will write something like printf enter limit that will indicate our users to enter a limit to which they want to check if there is any prime numbers or not. We will store that value in a limit variable by using a scanf function, and we will initialize or declare that int variable. As we also need a factor variable, so we will also declare that factor variable with an initial value of 0, as the factor is not going to have any value initially. Then our first step is going to check whether that limit is a positive number or a negative number. If that limit is a negative number, we will again indicate our users that enter a positive number, and we will take that input by again using a scanf function, and we will store that value in the limit variable. Or else the number is a positive number, so what we need to write or what we need to do? As we have discussed that we need a for loop that is going to input each number that we need to check whether that number is a prime or not. So we will first write that input for loop like for int I is equals to 1. So we will declare that int I is equals to 1. So for the first step, we will give the I as a value of 1. A semicolon I less than equals to limit semicolon. So as we need our I needs to continue from 1 to the limit, so we will define that our for loop is going to continue from I and until I is less than equals to limit. Then we will update our for loop like I plus plus. So that for loop is our input for loop that is going to input those values from 1 to that limit. And we need to check whether any number in that limit is a prime number or not. To check whether there is any prime number or not, we will use another loop as we have discussed before, like for int j is equals to 1 semicolon j is less than equals to I semicolon, and we will update that j by j plus plus. And this for loop is going to have a if statement like if I%j is equals to 0, factor is equals to factor plus 1. Similar to the previous program, this program is also following the same rule, or this program is also following the same condition. That is, if the number I is going to divide it by j, as we know I is the input, so if the number I is going to divide it by j with a remainder 0, that is I%j is equals to 0, then we will add our factor box with a value. After this for loop, we want to print whether there is any prime number or not. So after this for loop, we will enter something like if the factor is having two values, like if factor is equals to 2, then print that number like this. So if that factor is going to have value 2, that is factor is equals to 2, then print that I value. So let's run this program to see whether this program is actually working or not. So let's enter a number like 10. Okay, so our terminal is blank. So why this is happening? Let's take another example, like let's enter something like 100. Again the terminal is blank. So why this is happening? So let me show you why this is happening and what is that special case we need to write to run this program perfectly. Before that, let me print the factor values after this for loop. I will write something like print f %d comma factor semicolon, and I will create a new line. So let's run the program now. Let's enter a value like 10. Okay, let me update that print statement like factor is. So again, let's run this program. Let's enter a value like 10. Now you could see that factor is having some values, like factor is having value 1, factor is having value 3, 5, 8, 10 and so on. So what is happening that this factor is not having the value 2 to print out the prime number. So let me show you. So in the first for loop where I is equals to 1, so the I is going to be divided by j, as the remainder is going to 0 and the factor is going to have the value 1. So factor is 1. Then in the second iteration, when I is equals to 2, then 2 is going to be divided by 1 and 2. That means I is going to be divided by 1 and 2. As we know, 2 is going to be divided by 1, that is the remainder is going to be 0, and again 2 is going to be divided by 2. The factor box is going to have 2 values added to it, like factor is 3. For 3, we will have the same issue, factor box is going to add it with a value 2 and factor is 5 and so on. So to check this, what we need to do, we have to reset our factor box with a value 0 before the second for loop. So what that gonna do? That is going to calculate the factors that are associated with each number. So let me show you what I'm saying. So we need to do something like this. We need to give a value 0 before this for loop. So what that gonna do? Let's run the program again. Now let's enter a value like 10. In this case, in the first iteration, I is having the value 1 and I is going to divide it by j, that is I is going to be divided by 1. So the factor is going to have the value 1, so factor is 1 and there is no output after that. In the second iteration, the I is going to have the value 2 and I is going to divide it by j, that is I is going to divide it by 1 and 2. So that means factor is going to have the value 2, that is factor is having the value 2 and there is 2 after that. In the third iteration, I is going to have the value 3 and I is going to divide it by j, that means 3 is going to divide it by 1, then 2, then 3. Then again that factor is going to have the value 2, that is factor is having the value 2 and after that there is 3. So now our program is calculating the factors for each number and printing if there is a number that is having 2 factors. Let's delete that print statement. Let's run the program again. Let's enter something like 10. And here you go. 2, 3, 5, 7. Let's run the program again. And this time let's enter 1000. So here you go. This program is now working perfectly fine. So that's your C program printing the prime numbers between 1 to any value. So finally we have completed our C program to find the prime number. I hope you have liked this video. If you have any doubts or if you have any questions, ask me in the comment section. And please subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to get notified for future updates. You could follow me on Instagram where I do post all the slides included in the video. And you could follow me in the Twitter where I'm going to include the PDF version of this slide. And finally, leave a like if you have liked this video and peace. Have a nice day.